All right, so we're going to begin chapter Peichet 88. Even though it's not a long chapter, it's not an easy one. So if you wish, maybe grab Tehilim so you can follow. I need to give a brief introduction about Tehilim and prayer in general, otherwise many will have a hard time following many of the Pesukim here because they may appear redundant, repetitious, heavy. What exactly is he trying to do? That he's using all kinds of expressions and terms that don't appear to be anything new compared to what he has said before. So I need to explain a few ideas, especially for those who are listening to this for the first time. The Torah tells us the importance of prayer. We see many examples of tefillah in the Torah itself, with our forefathers, how it meant so much for them. They were completely aware of the divine presence of God. And they knew, somehow they had a tradition, it was clear to them that in order to reach Him, to relate to Him, you need to use prayer. It's not enough that we just use our thoughts, that we have a good heart. We need to communicate. We need to use what the human being has been endowed with, a special, beautiful keli, vessel, that is called words, speech. Animals don't have that, even though they somehow communicate, but we have the power of speech. And that power of speech is very important. We use it in life in many, many ways. But man forgets the most important part of speech is it gives him the ability to communicate with Hashem. Even though Hashem knows our thoughts, He doesn't need us to communicate to Him. But for those of you who want a better or deeper understanding as to why Hashem wants us to pray to Him, I have already lectures on speech here on the internet, the power of speech, the essence of prayer, what it's all about, how effective it could be. And that even though we know, as Jews, we have a tradition that mazal, or one's destiny, is something very powerful. It guides one through life. And many, many things appear to be set in stone as a result of that destiny that we call mazal. Still, that prayer that we're told is important can sometimes change one's mazal. And that is a very important part of our faith, that nothing is completely set in stone. Even if the doctor tells you this guy only has a few days to live, we trust in Him, we turn to Him in prayer. We know that that powerful tool called prayer can and has made miracles. So we know it for a fact, either personally, we've experienced it, or we've been told so by our parents and grandparents, that people have been helped greatly through prayer. Childless couples, people who are sick, people who are struggling in their livelihood, have been greatly helped just through prayer alone. But, as I explained last week, it is important to know how to pray. And that's something that people really did not very well do in the past. They did not all know how to pray. Before we had a Siddur, which is an organized prayer book, people knew that it's important to pray, and they would just go to a corner sometime during the day whenever they were free, and they would try to put together some words. But not everyone is articulate, not everyone knows how to begin, what to say. How should he express himself? People know how to cry, yeah, but that's not enough. Words are important. For some reason, Hashem wants to hear certain words, because it's not just the communication with Him or the reliance in Him, which the words will bring out. It's what it does to us. So prayer has a double importance in the sense that it influences us, it does something to us. It reminds us, of course, of our dependency on Him. And we know that this is powerful, of course, but it's supposed to do something to us. Strengthen our faith, hopefully mold our character, refine us, and make us remember what's really important in life, what's not important. But for that, it's important to say certain words. Because if we don't focus on certain things, then we're going to miss the target. And what is the target? To connect with Him, not to be distracted. Life is full of distractions. People don't realize what the main purpose of life is. Why did we come here for? Why was man brought into this world? It's a life of struggle, for just about anyone. I mean, even though some people have lots of money, they have struggles in some other way. Nobody has everything perfect. So why struggle? Is it, like our rabbis told us, just something temporary, like a little hallway, that we have to pass through this hallway to get to somewhere else? Yes. We know that because we learned about it in Pirkei Avot. So in our prayers, we are told to communicate to Hashem, to God, in a certain way where we are impressed by the fact that not only is He the Creator, but that He's involved in our daily affairs, which means everything is documented. He hears us, He observes us, and that's something that not everybody understood. Not everyone had clarity. Some people didn't believe it. They believed that God created the world. It's just so beautifully designed. That they don't have a trouble with, even though today people have trouble with that too. They'd rather believe it's all by itself, because they don't want to believe in a God. But in the past, a lot of people, a lot of nations, had no problem with that, but they were a little bit mixed up, confused. What does this God want from us? Is He really involved? Can He really listen from so far away? They didn't have clarity. They got confused because of the many powers that they perceived as being independent powers, which till today, in Hinduism, that's what you have. And comes along the Jew and says, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. I only turn to Him because He's the only one. He's the boss, He's in charge, He made all of us, and He made the angels too. So why do I turn to them if I can turn to Him directly? So this is a very, very powerful topic, the topic of prayer. And I think chapter 88 encapsulates, it really encapsulates a lot of the ideas of prayer. So even though it may sound to you, oh, it's a little bit monotonous. I'm intentionally using the word monotonous, I don't want to use another word. Because it may appear like, okay, it's the same thing, just said a little bit differently. It's beautiful, the words are poetic. But that's not the goal here. It's not about poetry, even though it is a song. But we have a clear tradition that Tehilim, Psalms, was said the Ruach HaKodesh. It was divinely inspired, just like the prophecies were. Prophecies are prophecies, which in some ways is a more powerful message about the future. Still, Tehilim is powerful. It is a prayer, it is a praise, and it contains a lot of valuable lessons besides the prophecies, and it's designed for us to use, because we don't have, I don't think anybody that ever lived besides David HaMelech could put together something like this. You could soon see, when you follow verse by verse, what exactly is he trying to do here by repeating himself. But it's not a repetition. Every word means something. Every pasuk teaches something. So there's a lot of valuable lessons, and I'm going to try to cover as much as possible in the little bit of time that we have. Also remember that during the time that we had a Bet HaMikdash, a temple, that was a time that our service with Hashem involved many rituals. There was a connection with Hashem, a powerful way to connect with Him through sacrifice, through many, many rituals on a daily basis. And of course, to be solved 3 times a year, to go and be there. The temple was something very, very special, and hopefully soon the 3rd one will be rebuilt. Amen. But in the meantime, the rabbis tell us that we don't have a temple, we don't have the sacrifices. What do we have? We have tefillah. So, in essence, the service of Hashem, which is one of the pillars on which the world stands, Torah, Avodah, Gemilut Chasadim, Torah, which is laws. We need to live our lives by following certain laws, by learning the Torah. Then we have Gemilut Chasadim, which makes sense to everybody. Kindness, people have to interact, and there needs to be a certain level of kindness between people, otherwise there's war and anarchy. And you need avodah, you need a connection with Hashem, you need a service of Hashem. That's the 3rd pillar. Without that faith, without that connection to Hashem, so much is empty in our lives, so much is lacking. It is a big, big hole. It can't be just about work, make more money, and then when you're done, you leave. You didn't even have time to enjoy. So what are we, slaves? Does that make sense? So we're not here to be slaves, but we are here to be servants of Hashem, because we have a mission, and especially the Jew. The Jew has a mission, he has a responsibility. And in order to help us in that responsibility, Hashem, of course, gave us mitzvot. Just like the government gives us laws, the police gives us rules for the street, how to drive. Hashem gives us rules on how to live. Life has to have rules. You can't just live how you want. Doesn't make sense. Not the city, not the government, nobody's going to allow you to live in any normal country as you wish. So Hashem says, this is my home. Therefore you follow my rules. This is the way you need to conduct yourself. So structure is important in our life. Prayer is part of that structure that we have in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening before we go to sleep. It helps us not to forget about Him, on condition that we mean it. Because there's a lot of people that will pray every day, 3 times a day, but they just rush through it. They're not sincere. Then those words will not make that much of a difference. Because in the end, ultimately, what prayer really amounts to is the expression of our feelings. So there's no expression of one's feelings if he's not focused, if he has no intent, if he doesn't mean what he says. Imagine somebody telling the other individual, yeah, I'll see you tomorrow, but he doesn't really mean it. He's just being nice to him. It's not nice. That's not nice. When you don't keep your promise. You could say, I'm not so sure. I'd love to see you tomorrow, but I'm not so sure. But if you promise and you're a man of your word, then where is your integrity if you don't keep your word? Integrity, it's very important. We value it amongst ourselves, and the more so He values it. And He knows the truth. We can't lie to Him. Unfortunately, people lie to others. But to Him we can't lie. So this tefillah, this what we call prayer, is a very powerful connection with Hashem. And many, many people who have used it in the past have been answered. But even if their prayers go unanswered, it doesn't mean it was a waste. In the end, it does something to us. And it could be that that prayer is set aside and it will be answered in the future for our children or grandchildren. They may need those tears that have been shed. They may need those words that have been said. And it could be, very well be, that we are benefiting from the words of our grandparents and great-grandparents who were willing to sacrifice their lives for Hashem. They were so devoted. And that devotion is not forgotten, it is not lost. It's documented. And if they couldn't benefit from it because they didn't live long enough or they didn't need it, Hashem puts it aside. Your grandson, your granddaughter may need it. So prayer accomplishes a lot more than what we know. And that is the importance of learning a little bit about Tehilim, because he teaches us, as we go along the various chapters, what we can accomplish and why these words make a difference. So let's begin with chapter 88. The Segula, the remedy for this chapter, is similar to the one in 87, and that is a community, a city that needs help. This chapter can help them. These words are powerful. If they're said in a certain way, they can make a difference. So Shir Mizmor Livnei Korach Lamnatzech Mahlat Le'anot Maskil Le'eman Ezrachi. Some words might appear a little bit difficult. I'll do my best to translate, to explain. So the first words are very, very familiar to us. This is a song to the sons of Korach for the Lamnatzech, for the conductor. So far, so good. The following words are a little bit tough. Different opinions as to what they mean. Al Mahalat Le'anot Maskil Le'eman Ezrachi. So maskil, we know that this is a lesson. This will enlighten us. These words will definitely enlighten us, those who pay it close attention. And they were told to Heman HaEzrachi, one of the singers, you be the one to say it. So what's mahalat le'anot? So I think the consensus is that the mahalat, coming from the word mechila, forgiveness, describes how Hashem forgave David because of le'anot, because of the great amount of suffering that he had in life. So what does that tell you right away? Pain and suffering is a kapara. Now, pain and suffering comes for different reasons. But ultimately, in the end, what they all have in common is it definitely achieves an atonement. A very powerful kapara. Wow. Do we really have to suffer? Do we have to go through pain? I'm not talking about self-inflicted pain. Pain in which we have no control. You know, sometimes you eat something rotten, something smelly. It's your fault. You should know better than that. The fish smells not good, you throw it out. It's dangerous. So we're not talking about smokers, you know, you're going to ruin your lungs. We're talking about something that you have totally no control. It could be a neighbor. It could be an illness that's not hereditary. And even if it's hereditary, I mean, everything's neshamay. It's from heaven. Pain and suffering, persecution, right? People argue with you and take you to court, and you don't see why. You didn't do anything to them to deserve this. That's a form of pain and suffering. Landing in jail and you're the wrong person. Why are they accusing you? Blood libels for the Jewish people. You know how much they suffered from it. An incredible, nonsensical accusation. Blood. It's against our Torah to use bloody. And we mix it with the matzah. Christian blood, does that make sense? Yeah, but a lot of people bought it, yeah. People actually thought Jews have horns, you know that? In this country. Not in Africa, in this country, Americans. Oh, I thought Jews have horns. Yeah, I've heard people say that. So, this is what you're dealing with. So, suffering in the hands of mobs, suffering in the hands of people who are ignorant, because they follow, what they're being told. And there's all kinds of accusations that the Jews suffered from. But it's not only about Jews, it's about anyone who's being hurt maliciously. Why? What for? So, Mahalat Le'anot, David HaMelech is an example of an individual who suffered a lot, suffered greatly. He's a righteous man. He really didn't hurt anybody. And we know that. Read his history. 70 years, that's all he was here. What did he do already? People were jealous of him. Oh yes, jealousy causes a lot of problems. It's a lot about jealousy, Solomon says. A lot of the problems is just because of jealousy. So, al-mahalat le'anot. So we're going to use this interpretation for these words, that the mehila, that the forgiveness of David for any sins that he may have done, there's no one perfect, in the end it served as a mahala. So le'anot meaning inuyim, is for a purpose. Pain and suffering serves a certain purpose that we're not always aware of. Now, all right, then why say mizmor? You're talking about pain and suffering. Why begin with the mizmor? This is a song? Why should you be happy about it? Well, yeah, you could say, of course, be happy. The happiness is not so much about the atonement. The rabbis tell us a very valuable lesson here. When we bless Hashem, we thank Hashem. In the same way that we are accustomed to thank Hashem for all the good that He does for us, that's very nice of you. I mean, after all, we have to be grateful. Don't forget, you have to thank Him when He hurts you too. I say, what? Yeah, that's a very important lesson. When somebody passes away, what do we say? Baruch Dayan HaEmet. Say, bless Hashem, who's the righteous judge. He judges truthfully. Yes, because He knows why this man left this world at this time and in this fashion. Only He knows. So we say that blessing during a time that everybody's in mourning. That's true. There's definitely a need to mourn. There's a need to be sad. There's a need to be happy at a different time. As Solomon says, there's a time for everything. But our initial reaction is Baruch Dayan HaEmet. We have to recognize that there is a judge, and He judges according to the truth. Everything is with truth. Everything in His eyes, makes sense. We don't know the answer to everything, but we accept it. And that acceptance is important. Otherwise, we would go crazy. We wouldn't understand what's going on. People lost their mind when they didn't have that minimal amount of faith and bitachon in Hashem. They go crazy. So therefore, mizmor, yes, we say a song here, we thank Hashem, even for when things are not doing so well. Actually, the Kabbalah explains that this may be a powerful segula, powerful remedy for someone who is struggling, to show how thankful and grateful he is for the suffering. Hashem, thank you. The more thank you we say, the more we will see the Yeshua from Hashem. Because the more thankful we are, the more we identify with Hashem, that this is for our good. it could very likely be that any accusations against us that may still be there will be canceled, will be removed just because of that merit. We need merits. And there's all kinds of ways people can accumulate merits. You know, remember school, extra credit? This is not exactly an extra credit. It's more powerful than that. It's a merit that can protect us from all kinds of trouble or get us out of a situation which we can't in any other way. You can even hire the best lawyers. Sometimes they won't help you. But a zechut, a merit, it may go a long way. Adonai Elohi Yeshuati, Yom Tza'akti Balayla Nigdecha. So he turns to God, the God of my deliverance. And he says, I cried by the day, and by night I also offered you prayer, Nigdecha. Okay, that's pretty familiar. We've seen that in the past, that he cried, he prayed day and night. But here the word is Elokei Yeshuati. What's Yeshua? You know, there's a lot of words in Hebrew that appear to be synonymous. But we know that in Hebrew, in Lashon HaKodesh, in the Holy Tongue, there are no real synonyms. Every word has a different, distinct meaning. Hatzalah. Okay, that's easy, to be saved. Ezra, to be helped. So what's exactly Yeshua? Yeshua, salvation. What's salvation? Ask anybody what salvation is, except for a Christian, because a Christian's idea of salvation is something else. We're not getting into that. But Yeshua, salvation in our terminology, is something that comes directly from Hashem. So we're not talking about somebody gave you a hand, even though that's also from Shamayim. He's a messenger after all. Yeshua is from Hashem. When we say something is directly from Hashem, completely in the hands of Hashem, what we're saying is it's done. And it cannot be undone. It's complete. When Hashem heals the individual directly, he will never go back to a relapse to the illness. When we say Refa'enu Hashem v'nerafeh, why say v'nerafeh? Hashem heal us so that we be healed. Just heal us. Because we want that refuah to be complete. Not that 5 years from now, the problem will come back and resurface. Hashem's refuah is complete. Human beings' refuah, he can put a band-aid, he can give you antibiotics, the problem can come back. There could be a relapse. So that is the meaning of why we ask for Hashem's refuah directly, or Hashem's Yeshua. When there will be Hashem Yeshua, Bezrat Hashem will come out of the exile. Mashiach will come. It will be complete. It will not be partial. Even though the redemption does happen in stages, but it's headed in that direction. There's no going back. That's it. There's no going back once the redemption began, and I believe it has. As I've explained many, many times, there's more than 7 million Jews already in Israel. The infrastructure is being laid down. It's not what it was 50, 60 years ago, and definitely not what it was 100 years ago. It's a completely different country, different land. So we're seeing the prophecies being fulfilled in front of us. So it started, but it happens in stages. The Yeshua is coming. So here he's telling us the Yeshuati, the salvation, complete salvation, is from Hashem. And what that means is anything is possible. Just read. Read what your forefathers testified. They were witnesses. They saw the Red Sea part, split. They saw it. They're not lying to us. Generation after generation, we say so, not only in our prayers. In Pesach, we celebrate it. And when did Pesach begin? Not 100 years ago, not 1,000, not even 2,000 years ago. A lot more than 2,000 years ago. So who was the first one to make that claim? Our forefathers. They saw it, they left. Where do they all come from? I mean, even in Egypt, there's hieroglyphics, there's proof, there's a lot of evidence that the Jews were there. So how did they all get out? So one who, with an open mind, learns our history with an open mind and reads even the evidence of certain historians who have an open mind, not too many have an open mind, then he will see that they very much are the same. They attest to the exact same thing, that there were miracles, that there were plagues in Egypt, that they saw niflaot, they saw incredible supernatural events. It has happened. And it's not only the Jews making that claim. Other religions too have said the same thing. Is everybody lying? Everybody is fantasizing? Everybody? What about maybe some are saying the truth? Especially if their whole religion, which is our Jewish religion, is based on testimonies of hundreds of thousands of millions of people. Not just one guy who says, last night an angel came to me and told me, which is basically what most religions are all about. Yeah. Judaism is not like that. Ours is very, very solid that this is exactly what happened. We saw that Hashem brought about deliverance, Yeshuati. So I cry day and night. What does that mean, day and night? Because I don't give up. A Jew never gives up. He realizes that day and night he needs to continue to pray no matter what happens. One of these days Hashem will answer him. So this is an example, an additional example of how the tefillah should be, not once in a while. Oh, when I'm in the mood, when I have the time. No. Yom tza'akti v'layla niktecha. It's a daily routine. You like to fast, or you like to eat every day? Some people like to eat a lot every day, but at least breakfast and dinner. So why should prayer be any different than that? This is what your body needs, and this is what your soul needs. So here we see a little bit of a description of what prayer is all about. In verse 3, Pasuk Gimel, that let my prayer come before you, turn your ear to my supplication. Rinati, my song, my supplication, but he's dividing up the prayer into two parts. He's calling part of it tefillah and part of it rinah. Tefillah is because it's important to have kavanah, the thought. You formulate your thoughts before you express them. And rinah is the actual utterance, the words that come out. So let those come before you. Would you take just my tefillah and my thoughts? No. I want you to express them. As I said in the beginning, expressing those thoughts makes a world of a difference. Not only Kabbalistically, as far as the level of prayer being expressed with words. Besides that, I said it does something to us. If you keep it inside, as we say in Spanish, reprimido. I'm not sure how to say that in English. If you keep it contained, if you could leave it contained within you, repressed, I think it is in English. Yeah? It's not good. You have to express it. You have to say it. Right? Then it hopefully does what it does. So somehow we don't see the words. We don't see words. But we know that they exist. That voice does do something. People hear it. So Hashem for sure hears it. Next pasuk. By the way, if one does have words, but he does not have the thought, no kavanah, no focus, then those words really are not going to go anywhere. If one only has thoughts and doesn't have words, it's also half. In order for the prayer to be complete, it has to be a combination of the two. That the thoughts have been formed, we're sincere about it, we mean what we say, and the words have been said. My soul is sated with affliction, my life has reached the grave. Here he's describing whether his own life or the history of the Jewish people. We're talking about a situation where we have been satisfied or sated. We've had so much affliction that we're sated already with it, that our lives have reached the grave. How? How have they reached the grave? Because many, many times throughout history, if you learn history, you will realize that the Jewish people have suffered greatly, and that they were either killed or came close to being killed, generation after generation, time after time. So we've had a lot. So even though right now, relatively speaking, we may be better off than perhaps 70, 80 years ago when people went through the Holocaust, right? If you go back in history a little bit more time, you will see that there were other pogroms too. And there was inquisitions. So he says, and he's saying this in advance, look how much the Jewish people went through. Sava'ah. We're sated with all the ra'ot, with all the afflictions. And we've almost reached the grave, pretty much. But why say Sheol? I mean, these are very powerful words. You will see many words describing death. You will see words describing the grave, whether it's a pit or whether it's oblivion. They all mean something differently. Here, because he's saying Hayal Lish'ol Higiu, he's also including kids, people who never reached their prime in life. They didn't make it. They barely lived 20, 30 years. They didn't accomplish. Hashem, what about all those? You know, they barely had a life. People have questions about that. They don't know, of course, about reincarnation, but in his prayer, he's saying, Hashem, take those into consideration too. There's a lot of kids out there who never made it to adulthood. And it could also be spiritually speaking. They didn't grow up with a Jewish education, so they were deprived. It's not their fault, Hashem, right? They grew up somewhere in Borujerd, if you know where that is, right, in Iran. No community, no real Jewish community, even though there were Jews there. So it's not their fault. And there's a lot of towns like that in Iran, a lot of towns. Yeah. No community there, it's not their fault. There's villages too, that are even smaller. So they didn't reach their prime. Nechshavtim yordei vor. Haiti kegever en eyal. I was considered like those who go down the pit, like a man without strength. So yordei vor means a pit. Is it a pit meaning the grave, or is it a pit meaning prison? It could be either or. Some say that it is describing the prisons where people were thrown in, and you didn't hear about him anymore if he was there all his life. It's not like today, that the prisons is like a 3-4 star hotel compared to what it was in those days. And you have a gym too, by the way, I forgot.
Dungeon.
Yeah, you have a gym. So no, Yordei Bor. So the long diaspora, which is really what he's been describing a lot, as taking a toll, he says. It's taking a toll. A lot of people suffered as a result of that they didn't have a chance to live out their lives properly. Or like somebody that has no strength. Eneyal, no strength, meaning there's nothing that I could do. They did not allow me. They made harsh decrees against me. So given this situation, is it fair, Hashem, that these people should be taken away or live out their life this way? Now, of course, everything is fair. We said that before. But in the prayer, this is the correct way to ask, to say, Hashem, you're for sure going to do something about it, right? He wants us to say that. Hashem mit'avel et filatan shel tzadikim. The Midrash says Hashem desires the tzadikim to pray to him. That's why initially he did not give Sarah, Rivka, Hevelea children. I gave them beauty. I gave them wisdom. If I gave them children right away, they're never going to pray to me. And Hashem wants their prayer. Why does Hashem want their prayer more than anybody else? Because their prayer is sincere. Their prayer is for everyone, not just for themselves. Their prayer is very powerful. It does something to this world. Hashem therefore wants them to pray. That prayer is very important. You will see there are various pesukim that follow each other with a similar theme, all talking about individuals who perhaps didn't have a chance, didn't make it because they died before their time, or they were deprived of their rights. So he says, I am regarded like among the dead who are free. Free meaning they have no obligations. Right now, if I'm restrained in any way from being able to fulfill a mitzvah, it's like a person is dead. That's part of the story of Hanukkah. The Greeks decreed, but some people didn't understand it very well. The Hellenists, oh, there's nothing we can do about it. Let's not oppose them. They're not killing us. And the Maccabees said, no, this is a time to fight. Your survival depends on this. Don't you understand that this is all from Shamayim, from heaven? Why are the decrees happening all of a sudden? Because one senator got up and said, let's decree. You know, I've always asked myself, why do they want to rock the boat, I think they say in English? Everything is calm. You have good relations with the Jews. Why bother them? Don't you realize it's from Shamayim? Hashem is telling them to do so. He's asking us to unite. He's asking us to fight. When something goes wrong, this is a sign from Shamayim. Even though they're going to get the blame for it, the non-Jews. But still, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to fight. We're supposed to comply with his will. But otherwise, he says, I'm like a dead man. Who are free like corpses lying in the grave. Who are free like corpses, like lying in the grave, of whom you are not yet mindful. Well, they're cut off from your hand. You're not mindful of them yet because they haven't risen yet. When the dead will rise, of course, that's the time when Hashem pays attention to them. Those who have left this world, it's like they're gone. It's like they're gone. In other words, you can't do anything anymore. You're no longer active. You can't be productive. Hashem, if I am restricted, if I'm in any way limited because of the persecutions, because of the pain, because of not having the right to do something, then I might as well be dead. Chas v'shalom. Because that's what this amounts to. That's what he's saying. Because what happens when a person goes to the grave? He's exempt, rabbis tell us, from Torah and mitzvot, because at that point you can't do anything for yourself. As long as the candle is lit, as the rabbis tell us, you can still do repair work. That candle is the soul. As long as it's burning, as long as you have breath, you wake up in the morning. We're thankful to Hashem that gave us another day, another opportunity to do things right in case we did things wrong all along. A lot of people didn't wake up this morning. So, in his prayer, this is what he's expressing, Hashem. It doesn't make sense to die, right? Because at that point, who's going to pray to you? Who's going to do any mitzvot? And this is a situation that he's describing that applies to many Jews who are like dead, spiritually. Not necessarily physically, but spiritually, because they're inactive. They're not doing anything. They're just getting up in the morning, working, eating, sleeping, working, eating, sleeping. That's it. Very, very monotonous life that has no future. Nothing. Just a slave. To be a slave of the money, a slave of paying the bills. Because they don't understand what the real purpose of life is all about. They've never taken the time to examine it. It's not their fault. The majority of people growing up, especially in this generation, it's not their fault. But upstairs, they're going to ask them, okay, it's not your fault, but did you try to learn at least? Did you ask any time? Or you were just oblivious? We have to ask. That's what the child does on Pesach. He's supposed to ask, Abba, Daddy, what's all of this all about? Why do we eat matzah now? Don't be like the one, She'eno yodea lishol. That's the fourth child. He doesn't even know how to ask. There's a lot of kids like that. They don't even know how to ask. They don't know that you're supposed to ask. But when you ask a person that can give you a good answer too. You just don't want to ask anybody. Shatani bebor tachyot v'bachashakim b'mtzolot. That's the next verse. You have put me into the lowest pit, into the darkest places, into the depths. Here, three expressions, three descriptions of almost the same thing. A pit, lowest pit, dark place, the depths. What's the difference between them? I haven't seen anybody talk about the difference between these three, even though the words are different and they mean somewhere deep in the ground. It perhaps, because much of what he's saying applies spiritually as well, he could be describing individuals who are on different levels spiritually. Some are very, very much deep down. They have no clue what it is to be Jewish. They don't even know that they're Jewish. They're b'metzulot. And some of them are just in darkness. They're just ignorant. That's my opinion. That it could be that he's alluding to that. That, you have put me, not just him, you've put the Jewish people, you've put a lot of people as a result of this long diaspora. It has taken a toll, as we said. The long, long, long diaspora, because of the scattering, persecutions, and the wars, it has taken a toll on many, many Jews who don't realize what it is to be connected to Hashem. Pasuk Chet, Alai samecha chamatecha v'chol mishbarecha einita sela. Your wrath has weighed heavily upon me. Chamatecha is wrath, anger. It has weighed upon me. V'chol mishbarecha einita sela. And all the waves of your fury, of your anger, has constantly afflicted me. So why is he talking about hamatecha and mishbarecha, the wrath and the waves of fury? When we talk about wrath and fury, unfortunately, it is a description of the most heaviest types of punishments that we've gotten from Shemayim. The Torah describes it in certain parshiyot, that God forbid if the Jewish people are too stubborn, and they don't get the hint, they don't get the message, and they still don't rectify their deeds, even after so much trouble and persecution, things are going to intensify. And that intensification is called chema shefucha. There was tremendous wrath from above, that it will leave no room to think any other way. Even the goyim, the non-Jews, will say to themselves, wow, why are these Jews being singled out more than anybody else to suffer so much? It's never ending until this very day. Just listen to what's going on in the United Nations. What do they want from us? There's no nation in the world that has so many resolutions against them, like Israel. But forget about Israel right now. It's the Jewish people as a whole, even though we've had many successes as well. But overall, look at the picture. Why are they after us? No matter which party you belong to, they'll blame you. If you're poor, they're going to blame you. If you're rich, they're going to blame you. If you're a communist, they're going to blame you. If you're a liberal, no matter what you do, don't you realize that this is Nashamaim? That's something that in Israel today, especially the secular Israelis, they still don't understand. The problem is not with the Arabs. The problem is not with the neighbors. The problem is not with the threat from above, from the north, from the east. The problem is that our relationship with him is not 100% the way it should be. Don't you realize that? The reason why the Jewish people are having a hard time being continuously pestered, if we can use that word, by their enemies every single generation, whether it was with the Pelishtim years ago, the Philistines, or whether it's Palestinians today, it's interesting, similar name. It's because our deeds are not worthy enough. So how is Hashem going to remind us when things are not going to be functioning the way they should be? The weather's not cooperating 100%. Right? The economy is not exactly the way it should be. And militarily, we always have to spend so much of the budget on the military to defend ourselves. Why? Why should it be like that? All we have is a small little tiny piece of land about the size of New Jersey. Do you know that? The Arabs have so much land. So much land and oil. What do they want? They don't understand. They don't read this. This is the problem that we have. That's the importance of prayer. That's the importance of study Torah. So otherwise you're not going to get the answers. You're going to forget what the real problems are all about. So when he talks about Hamatecha and Mishbarecha as waves, waves is also something that comes constant. One after another. We don't have peace. All of a sudden, 20 years, no war. 30 years. Every so often we have some tranquility. Otherwise, especially before Mashiach comes, we have a tradition. It's going to be Mishbarecha, it's going to be Galim. And when you see wave after wave, you know that Mashiach is coming soon. So we've had that, one after another. We had 1948 war, we had 56 war, we had 67 war. We had 73 war. Then we had, of course, the various operations in Lebanon. We've had trouble elsewhere in the world. So that's why he describes in verse 8 that it has weighed heavily and constant, persecution after persecution. Irhakta miyudai mimeni shatani to'evot lamo kalu velo etze. You have estranged my friends. Irhakta means estranged, distanced them from me. Shatani to'evot lama, and you, to'evot means that you've made me abhorred by them, disgusted by them. Kaluk velo etze, and I'm like in prison, unable to leave. This is the impression that they have. They don't want to be friends. They hate us. They detest us. Okay, so you're going to say, well, let me move somewhere else. Kalu velo etze. I'm like in prison and I can't move. Because no matter where I go, it's the same thing going to happen. You know, before the state of Israel was born, there were some that were suggesting that we should go to Uganda or somewhere in Argentina, an area called the Pampas. Thank God we didn't end up going there. But even if we had gone to a place like that, believe me, there wouldn't be peace and quiet there either. They don't want us. They hate us. Why? Ask yourself why. You contribute so much to the world, whether it's in medicine, whether it's in science. How many Nobel Prizes have been won by Jews for their contribution, their discoveries? Major discoveries in many, many areas, and they know this still. They want to excommunicate us. They want to ban doing any business with us. Strange. We're helping and you want to ban? That means you don't want that help? And why are they banning us? For silly reasons, all because you're occupying some territory. You really believe that? Does that make any sense? It's childish, it's immature. There's so many other bigger troubles in the world. Real trouble. Where hundreds of thousands of people are being killed, either through hunger or through war or poison, and nobody's doing anything about it. And we bother them. This little state of a few million people bothers them like a thorn. We're continuously bothering them no matter what we do. Why? To'evot, they detest us. In Kalu Veloitz, I can't go anywhere. I'm like in prison. Where am I going to go? Can I fix it? So look how these words are part of his prayer and supplication to Hashem. But it's more than that. He is within the prayer telling us, this is what we present to Hashem. This is what we are aware of that's going on. And Hashem, of course, is aware of it. But this is how we express it. We're covering all these areas, not only because Hashem wants us to talk about them, because we need to have proper insight. We need to have a proper understanding that these are real things and not happening by chance. So he's putting them into the prayer so that we should understand it. Oh, really? They hate us? Oh, my father didn't tell me that they hate. Oh, you're going to find out very soon. You think he's your friend? No. And you know stories of people, they thought, a friend. He was working for the guy in Israel for 20 years, and then he came and stabbed him, his boss. He paid your salary. He fed you. How could you do that? Everything is from above. Obviously, we're very saddened by it. We're hurt by it. We're very upset. But it's from above. And it's all here. Eni da'ava mini, oni kiraticha, Adonai b'chol yom shitachti lecha chapai. My eye is afflicted because of distress, even though oni means poverty, but it could mean also distress. I call to you, Hashem, every day. And shitachti lecha chapai. I have stretched out my hands in prayer to you. So if you read the words, it just appears to be repetitive. What is he adding here? Rabbis tell us there are all kinds of trials, nisyonot. There's the trial of poverty and of wealth. Those people who are wealthy have the most difficult trial of all. Nisayon ha'osher, because if a person is wealthy, he's not going to easily remember that God is the source of his blessing. He's going to be arrogant. He's going to step on people. He's wealthy. He thinks he owns everything. People who have lots of money have a big nisayon. How are they going to use that money? People who are poor have a very big nisayon. It's also a big trial, but they're humbler. They're humbled because they're poor. Hopefully they'll pray and they'll cry. So here he talks about that type of a trial. The fact that he was poor, because the Jewish people suffered from poverty a lot. And what poverty does, even though the wealth is a greater test, poverty can drive people crazy. It can make of someone a criminal too. People have dropped their religion because they've suffered. They stopped working. They started working on Shabbat sometimes because they thought that will help them. So he says that poverty has really driven a lot of Jews away from you. It's not their fault. So he's considering himself like a poor man, not only because, it drove him crazy. It didn't drive him crazy, but poor people, if they really cry to Hashem, Hashem listens to them because they have no one else to speak up for them. So he includes himself, like we said before, amongst the poor. Regardless, anybody who's being challenged, either through poverty or wealth, Shatachti elecha chapai, he says, I open up my hands, I call to you, stretch out my hands to you, because Kavel Hashem, always have hope in Hashem. Regardless of your situation, it may be very, very bad, challenging, call out to Hashem. Never give up hope. We've said that many, many times. Always be hopeful. However, realize that your challenge is also a test. There was once an individual who came to the big rabbi, the Chafetz Chaim rabbi, please bless me that I should be a successful businessman. I want to make a lot of money. He said, why do you want to make a lot of money? Rabbi, if I make a lot of money, I'm going to give a lot of tzedakah. You're going to give charity. Remember your promise, okay? Well, right now I'm giving. I'm a very generous man. We know you are, but make sure that when you have lots of money, that you continue to give. Well, of course, if I'm giving now, I'm going to give then even more. Okay, remember. And he blessed him, and sure enough, little by little, he became a very successful individual. Years went by, and the big rabbi, the Chafetz Chaim, was visiting that city where this new wealthy man lived. And the wealthy man approached the rabbi crying. Why are you crying? I heard the good news that you've, Baruch Hashem, succeeded, you're wealthy. Why are you crying? He says, Rabbi, ever since I became rich, my hands are tight, my fist is closed. I can't give tzedakah anymore. He was crying, he felt bad for himself. So the rabbi smiled at him and says, what do you think? The evil inclination, the Yetzer Hara that you had once upon a time, he was small back then. You think he would stay small even though your money grew? As soon as your money grew, he grew too. As soon as the money grows, the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, grows with it. The richer you are, the greater the challenge is to give charity. Very few people, very few are able to be strong and to be charitable, generous, despite the fact that they have millions and billions of dollars. It's a very, very tough challenge. So the Yetzer Hara will always be there. Pray. Pray. Prayer is very important. Hashem, please help me with the evil inclination. Don't put me in a test, in a situation where I may fail. I may be tempted. That's part of our prayer every day. If we don't make those, if we don't say that, if we don't make those prayers, then it's going to be harder. The prayer helps. Prayer reminds us of our duties, and the prayer, of course, is a chance to ask Hashem to give us assistance. If we ask for His assistance, this is something spiritual. We're not asking Him for money. We're asking Him for spiritual assistance. Is much more effective. That type of prayer is much more effective. Better chance that He will be heard. Yeah, there are stories with people who were poor, became rich, and then they went back to being poor. And the reason for that is because when they were poor, they were really good people. And somehow, as soon as they became rich, they became corrupted or not as good. And somehow Hashem decided, I'm going to put them back in their old situation because they couldn't function properly with all that money. Everything is for the good. You have to be very, very careful if you're facing a challenge, to pray to Hashem at least. At least pray that He should be with you. So therefore, regardless of a person's situation, even if he's struggling, if he's going through a big test, pray and don't lose hope. We always have hope that even our situation right now is not too good, it could change tomorrow. But if one does not pray and does not have that faith, then it's not going to happen so easily. Do you perform wonders for the deceased? Do the dead offer you any praise? He is continuing to tell us that, once a person is in the grave, Hashem does not make wonders for him, does not perform miracles for them. The dead don't praise Him. So why is He saying this? Pretty much He said that before. The dead can no longer do anything for them. We can help them out a little bit through our Kaddish, through our charity that we do for them, but they for themselves can no longer do anything. It's too late. A person is given a certain amount of years. This is the time to do it. Hashem, you don't do these things for the dead, right? The dead don't thank you, don't praise you. Interesting word, refaim, by the way. If you follow the Hebrew, metim makes sense, the deceased, the dead. But what kind of a word is refaim? This is my own linguistic research, if you call it that. Refaim perhaps is ghosts, as it's called today in Hebrew, ruach refaim. It really means bodies without a spirit, according to the commentaries, which is the same thing in a sense. Rephaim, something that has no more living spirit in it. A deceased, a corpse. So there's different words that we can use to describe it. Somehow, for some reason, we don't know all the reason, he's using different words here to describe all kinds of situations. And there's a reason. Why say metim and why say rephaim? It means more or less the same thing. Obviously, he's telling us that, look, at the various levels of existence, while you're alive, you are very, very special. Once you've left as a cadaver, as a rephaim, as whatever it is in the grave, in the upper world, it makes no difference where you are. You can no longer do anything for yourself. It's a continuation. Is your kindness recounted in the grave? Or your faith, your faithfulness, is it talked about in the place of Avadon? Avadon is a place of, in English they call it perdition. You know, in the place where there's nothing. Here's another example. Why use Kever and why use Avadon? Even though we know that Gehenom has different names, the grave has different names, but why use the different words? Obviously, he's describing different stages where people may be, because the afterlife is not just one location. For some people, it could be a kever initially, it could be Avadon. Either way, regardless of where one is, in those places, they don't talk about your glory as much as here. Here is where it makes a difference. Here is where we can talk about Hashem's wonders, where we can impress upon people when we share with them our life story. That's why he's talking about Pilecha, Hashem's wonders. What difference does it make if you talk about Hashem's wonders? Yes, because if people hear it, perhaps it will reinforce their faith. Where can we accomplish this if not here while we are alive? Which is what the next verse is all about. Are your wondrous deeds known in the darkness of the grave, or your righteousness in the land of Neshiyah? Neshiyah is another word, oblivion, forgetfulness. That's a place where people are forgotten about. That's a place where you're not going to hear anything from them anymore. They don't communicate with us except occasionally in a dream, by the way. But otherwise, you know, this is not a location from where anything can be expected. Anything can be done. Only while we're in Olam Hazeh, in this world, in this physical world. That is where we see the difference people make in other people's lives, through their prayers, through their deeds, through their mitzvot. This is the place. ואני אליך, אדוני שיבעתי ובבוקר תפילתי תקדמך. To you, God, I cry each morning, my prayer comes before you. So here, again, he's reminding us that even though he suffered, he continued to pray. You know that a lot of people stop praying because there's something, that's it, I'm upset at God. Where was God in the Holocaust? All kinds of complaints. I went through everything that he described us till now. But ani elech Hashem shibati, I still called out to you. And baboket tefilati. First thing I did in the morning was not coffee. Right? I prayed. For some people, there's other things. I got to make my phone calls. I got to read the newspaper. I got to check this internet or whatever it is. First thing in the morning is what we do is prayer. It's supposed to be the first moment we get up. We say thank you Hashem modani lefanecha. We wash our hands. Look at a Jew's life, how it's governed by certain rules and how it does so much for him if he follows it. If he doesn't follow it, then he's just like an animal that is barely existing, not living a life. Imagine a family sitting around the table, a beautiful Shabbat, no television, no radio, no cell phones, nothing except a father and mother listening to their children, what they covered in school, what they learned about, singing the songs, making blessings, and enjoying themselves together. Quality time. Shabbat is about quality time, not only with God, of course, but with your children, your family. People don't have that today. They still had it 50 years ago, a little bit, even those who were not so religious. But today everything is about work, more work. I got to make a little bit more money. What? Again, it's all about slavery. We have more and better technology than our forefathers did, but we are more slaves than they were. Why should it be like that? People don't realize that their time, the precious time, is being robbed from them by all of these technology things, all of these gadgets and toys that are appearing every single day. A new cell phone, a new computer, a new game. And what did I do? I called out to you, I prayed to you. Towards the end of the chapter, then why does it appear that you have forsaken me, you've abandoned my soul? Why do you conceal your countenance from me? What that means is, unfortunately, from time to time, there's something called Hester Panim. Hashem conceals His face. And that is also a very, very low point in our relationship with Hashem. So He talks about that, though. He brings it up. Concealment, Hashem? I know you conceal yourself because you're upset, but don't you think that that concealment is going to make things any worse? It's going to make things worse, harder for some Jews. If they don't see you at all, they don't see any miracle, why conceal yourself? So remember, it's not only about himself, even though it appears to be that he's talking about himself, because he's an example after all. This is a prayer for people to use in the future if they face a similar situation. So he's using himself, but in representing the Jewish people as a whole. Concealment is a big problem, because there will be, the Torah says, aster astir, there will be concealment in very, very difficult times. We've had that in the past, but the good news is, I believe, and we all feel that that concealment is going away. Little Hashem is smiling. He's saying, I'm bringing you back. Don't you realize that I'm awakening you? Don't you see how many people are doing teshuvah, are repenting? Get more and more. I need more. Too many of my children still don't know how to say Shema Yisrael, Hashem says. I want more and more to receive Mashiach. Otherwise, it's going to be too late for them to do teshuvah then. And it's going to happen every day. Any day it can happen. But right now, he says, there is this Hester Panim. It gives the appearance that you've abandoned us. Even the non-Jews say that. Oh, those Jews are no longer going to get back Israel. The Vatican was very, very surprised when we got back Israel. Oh, they're never going to go back to Jerusalem. They were very surprised when we liberated Jerusalem. But the appearance is there, so that Hester Panim has been very painful, that concealment. Continuation, that from my youth I have been afflicted in approaching death, yet I bore the fear. I bore the fear of you, which is firmly established. Afuna means it's firmly established within me. I've made place for it. Another very important pasuk, this verse 16, saying that regardless of the fact that throughout my life, from when I was young, I carried this burden of pain, nonetheless, emecha, your fear has always been there with me. Just look at history, the Jews. Beautiful, precious souls, even though they suffered a lot. Were they willing to give up their Judaism in Spain or in Portugal? No, in the world they were willing to die for it. So Hashem, you know that you can say the word youth means from the very beginning of the establishment of the Jewish people. Ever since there were always Jews who emecha afuna, they made place for your fear, regardless of that they were ani, poor, and in pain from the very youth, either all their life. Simple people, is it mimut, how pure and how sincere. Those people, that's all they cared about. No one was able to force them to change their religion. They always had emecha afuna. Your furies have passed over me, your terrors have cut me down, because they suffered from so much of the anger of Hashem, of the fears, of the anxiety. Sabuni chamaim kol hayom ikifo layachad. They have engulfed me like water all day long. They all together surrounded me. The nations, like water, they wanted to drown us. So all of them came against me. All of them together. Ikifo layachad. Irhakti mimenu ohev areya miyudayim achshach. You have estranged from me, beloved and friend, and I've been rejected by those who are close to me. Or miyudayim achshach, they are in darkness, those who are close to me. This last verse is also a description of that I have no friends. Nobody likes me. On the contrary, they all surrounded me. They all gave me a hard time. They all threatened me. All of this, of course, is a description of the anger of Hashem. That's what he wants us to remember over here, the attribute of justice that has been always there against us. And because of that, many Jews perhaps could not do as well as they would otherwise. But all of that is fast changing. Hashem says that as soon as I bring about the redemption, you're going to notice that all of that anti-Semitism, all of that oppression is going to slowly die down. And if anything, they're going to want to befriend you. They're going to come close to you. And we're seeing signs of that too. So even though it's not so clear, we're headed in that direction. And very soon, as Hashem, we will see a complete change in the attitude of all the nations towards that which is spiritual, toward that which is divine. Amen.